about Keir Starmer is, obviously for anyone at the most basic level, is will Britain under Keir Starmer...
The Office of National Statistics has conducted vital work on the state of immigration and found the previous government were running an open...
Political parties has to form relationships with the media, with...
Russell Brand recently pulled back the curtain to expose Prime Minister Keir Starmer's hidden agenda. He didn't hesitate to make these bold statements about Starmer. The actor and entertainment personality took his time to reveal the shocking agenda of the leader of the UK's Labour Party. His revelation exposed the side of politics many don't even know existed. Prepare yourself for a revelation like never before. Brand's shocking exposure could shape the future of British politics, and watching this video will make you one of the few to learn firsthand about this emerging firestorm. Before we get to Brand's shocking revelation, let's revisit Starmer's rise to political power. The supposed light of the Labour Party came with promises to transform the party and take it to new heights. With his polished demeanour and promise of a new style of leadership, he inspired voters to dream of a new, revitalised party. But how quickly British politics can shift. As the dust settled from the initial honeymoon, a harsh reality began to emerge. The man who once ignited home found himself in the middle of a political storm. His approval ratings have plunged dramatically to unprecedented levels. But who could have brought this harsh reality upon Keir Starmer? Starmer's handling of the immigration crisis has left many voters confused and disheartened.
We've seen a devastating rise in Islamophobia, leaving people feeling fearful and unsafe in their own country. I've heard firsthand of women wearing hijab who are too scared to travel by public transport, of Muslim families being abused as they leave the mosque. The surge in Islamophobia is simply appalling. Muslim women and girls disproportionately targeted, mosques forced to ramp up security, and British Muslims questioned as if they are terrorists. I do not want Britain to be a place where British Muslims are not able to be their whole selves, where they feel they must hide or tone down who they are for fear of being attached to views that are not their own, where they're asked to apologise for the actions of people who do not act in their name. Our Britain is one where the enormous contributions of British Muslims are recognised and celebrated, their stories heard, their lives free from discrimination.
Since Starmer took office, over 20,000 migrants have entered the UK, leaving the public increasingly impatient. Taxpayers feel mounting pressure, but Starmer's government has failed to come up with a solution. The issue extends beyond the immigration crisis to how Starmer handled the issue of free speech. His warning to Elon Musk about social media content sparked controversy, with many people viewing it as censorship, distancing from supporters of open debate. As more voters begin to express their frustration with Starmer's leadership, political analysts are questioning his leadership style. They are arguing that he is becoming increasingly disconnected from the concerns of voters.
As the ONS sets out, nearly 1 million people came to Britain in the year ending June 2023. That is 4 times the migration levels compared with 2019.
The promises that at one time excited Starmer's supporters have become meaningless, with many of them voicing their disappointment. Despite the perceived widespread discontent, Starmer hasn't shown any signs of change. This rigidity has made many political analysts suggest that his political career is going to be short-lived. The stark contrast between the initial hope and the current state of the Labour Party is evident, casting Starmer as a symbol of outdated politics.
I was shocked and angered at the killing of George Floyd and the response of President Trump and the US authorities to the peaceful protests, to people rightly demanding justice, has been an affront to humanity. The last week has shone a spotlight on the racism, discrimination and injustice experienced by those from black and minority ethnic communities in the US, in the UK and across the world. Martin Luther King said, "Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere." That's why today I've written to the Prime Minister asking for his assurance that the British government is doing all that it can to urge President Trump to respect human rights and the fundamental democratic right to peaceful protest. And this week, Labour has called on the UK government to ensure that our exports are not being used in the suppression of democratic rights in the US. But we must also reflect on the injustices in our own country. We must address the reality and the impact of anti-black racism, which has been highlighted by the Black Lives Matter movement. Now, more than ever, it's incumbent upon us all to ensure that this is a turning point. We must.
The distance between him and the electorate is growing. So many political analysts are asking if Starmer can breach that gap.
I did not want to come to Jesus. I saw Jesus as part of a pantheon along with Buddha and other prophets, and not to be derisory, possibly even alongside things like dream catchers or things that I don't even especially believe in, avatars and allusions to a great power. This world is not all things. This is not the whole of this is why it doesn't make sense to us, and that's why the rational mind can only take us so far. Recently I understood when people say the peace that passeth all understanding, it's not just a lot of peace, it's the peace that happens when you don't understand things, and the rational mind has run out of gas now because it can only operate on this bandwidth. So thank you for identifying that I was looking for something, and thank you for identifying that all passion and all hunger and all attachment and all longing and all craving, and any addicts know what I mean by the word craving, is the...
However, the situation has taken a dramatic turn. Russell Brand, a former comedian, an actor turned political commentator, has started criticising Starmer, promising to expose a hidden secret that will shake the foundation of British politics.
No, this is a different order of failure. This happened by design, not accident.
Many people didn't vote for the Labour Party in the last election. Now, Russell Brand has targeted Keir Starmer, and his accusations are no laughing matter. Could Brand's comment be the final nail in Starmer's coffin politically? Brand's recent comments about Starmer's and British politics have sent shockwaves across Westminster. He hasn't hesitated to criticise the Prime Minister, labelling him as a puppet of the WEF.
With you. We want to provide alternative narratives, and not only provide the narratives, invite you to create the narratives with us. Because do you know one thing I know? I don't know what's best. I've made a lot of mistakes. I've been wrong many times, but I'm beginning to think I'm right about this. The mainstream media is not your friend. The culture is not your friend. The government is not your friend. Big business is not your friend. They are operating collegiately in unison to create a set of systems that are beneficial to them and disadvantage you. The biggest threat to their power comes from unionisation and mobilisation of large groups of people. They're so nervous about it. They're so aggressive about it. They're so protective about it. It makes me think that they've got an agenda. The video that's got them all heated up and cross is one we made about Justin Trudeau and Justin Trudeau's introduction of emergency powers to shut down trucker protests, which were largely peaceful, which we said on this channel, that if you shut down peaceful protests, what you're essentially doing is trying to control dissent. Now, look at the next level. If someone points that out, you try to shut down that person. You've got to stamp it out like whack-a-mole, like the old woman that swallowed a fly. You've got to swallow a frog and an horse and a cat and a cow to just prevent the truth from getting out, that these people are not what they claim to be. They're not running fair liberal democracies. They use the aesthetic of fair liberal democracies. They look...
He continued by accusing him of being completely out of touch with the public. Brand argues that Starmer's rise to power was fascinated by a system designed to stifle real change. He also claimed that the current political landscape was deliberately constructed to ensure that only a select few can be elected to positions of power. But Brand's criticisms didn't stop there. He also condemned Starmer's handling of the UK's immigration crisis, pointing out that over 20,000 migrants have entered the country since Starmer took office.
As the Hollywood hills are devoured by a roaming inferno, and the United Kingdom is beset by extraordinary stories of group rape and exploitation that the government do not address. Suddenly, biblical passages like those found in Genesis concerning Sodom and Gomorrah don't sound like far-flung, fanciful fables, but prophetic and essential descriptions of how cultures fall apart without reverence and connection to God. Whether you are living without God on an individual level, or whether you are part of an entire culture that doesn't live without God and therefore looks with blind eyes for authority amidst false idols erected by the culture itself. It's difficult, isn't it, in 2025?
He went ahead to highlight the financial burden the issue of migrants poses on taxpayers and public services, contradicting Starmer's claims that the system is under control. According to Brand, every new person adds more pressure to public services, housing, healthcare and schools, all of which are funded by the taxpayers. Freedom of speech is another battleground where Brand believes Starmer is failing. He criticised Starmer's warning to Elon Musk about content on X, arguing that this plan to tighten social media controls has annihilated supporters of free expression. Brand opined that the more Starmer pushes for restrictions, the more it feels like an overreach by the government. But Brand's biggest criticism lies in his description of Starmer's handling of public discontent. He pointed out that the Labour leader's dismissal of a petition with 2.9 million signatures calling for his resignation is a sign of dangerous arrogance. Brand described Starmer's reaction as though he sees it as mere grumbling of a few disgruntled voices. As these allegations gain traction, they are rapidly shaping public opinion and could impact Starmer's political future, according to Brand. He also pointed out that the more Starmer ignored public opinion, the louder the noise of discontent would grow. Also, Brand said it is going to be harder to regain public trust if Starmer continues on this path too, with Starmer already experiencing a sharp decline in public support at an alarming rate. Brand's criticism could act as a catalyst for a major shift in voters' perception.
How we elect governments and all the rest of it. But what it is showing is that there's real discontent in terms of the fact that Keir Starmer lied in the run-up to the general election, won votes, got elected on the basis of a series of lies, and then once he's got in power, he's done the absolute opposite.
The consequences of his sharp criticism could have a more far-reaching impact on Starmer's leadership capabilities. As Brand pointed out, Starmer is currently one of the least popular leaders in the history of the UK, facing mounting pressure from all sides. The situation makes you wonder what the future holds for Starmer. Can he survive the wave of criticism? Overall, his political decline serves as a cautionary tale about unfulfilled promises. For Brand, Starmer's failures aren't just political missteps, but a betrayal of trust. Many voters share his opinion, especially as rising costs of public services, more taxes, and inflation continue to hit hard. Brand's critique goes beyond policy, it is about leadership. He believes Starmer's approach lacks the decisive action the UK desperately needs. Starmer's initial appeal as a beacon of hope to the Labour Party has crumbled in the wake of public disappointment.
Is that story was breaking on Sky News that's ultimately owned, at least for a significant part of its history, was ultimately owned and considerably influenced by Rupert Murdoch and News International, and the newspaper that they're talking about, the Sun newspaper, is owned by Rupert Murdoch and News International, and these instruments are used to create the kind of consensus among what you might call working class people or blue collar people to ensure that they're shepherded and herded in the general direction.
Russell Brand's sharp criticism, calling him a puppet of the WEF, World Economic Forum, has intensified scrutiny of Starmer, and it remains to be seen how he would navigate this impending disaster. What do you think of Brand's shocking revelation about Keir Starmer? Do you think Starmer has disappointed the UK voters? Let us know your thoughts in the comments section below. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next video.